You have these crews from Texas filling up these tubes full of water. It's a water dam. They're very heavy, and the hope is to keep storm surge from going in to this hospital. This is HCA Florida, Pasadena, and it's in Zone A, the low-lying area that's susceptible to storm surge. A literal fleet of ambulances has just arrived to begin the evacuation process. There are ambulances, buses, all to get these patients away from this hospital that sits in such a low-lying, vulnerable area right along Boca Ciega Bay, to get them to higher ground. Now, there is a mandatory evacuation order for everyone who lives in Zone A, that very vulnerable area, as well as mobile homes that aren't quite constructed to sustain against hurricane force winds. While this storm, Helene, is likely going to pass to our west, on the east side of the storm, still going to be a lot of impacts with wind, rain, and storm surge. 5 to 8 feet of storm surge predicted for this area, which could cause big problems for low-lying areas like where I'm standing and where this hospital sits as well. I'm going to continue to cover this storm. For Weather and Radar in Pasadena, Florida, I'm Jonathan Petramala.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Weather and Radar Meteorologist Becca Parker. That was just our weather reporter, Jonathan Petramala. He's on the scene in Florida as preparations are quickly coming to a close as Helene continues to strengthen and come close to Florida. So we are watching this hurricane very closely. We have been for some time now. And as many of you know, across Florida, it's going to be humongous impacts no matter where you're at in Florida. And when it comes to those impacts, it's either going to be tropical storm-like impacts or hurricane impacts. What you see behind me on the screen is our weather radar. Let's go ahead and get started. The weather radar is going to show you all the information that you need to know for the current time. You can see Helene right there. You see the lightning. You have the heavy rainfall that you see there as well. And Helene is churning right into the southern Gulf of Mexico there. Before we get really started into this live here, just please, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be checking that frequently. Apologies for starting a little late. We had some tech problems at the beginning, but we are good to go now. And we're going to get going here. So anybody with any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'll be checking that throughout the live here. This is a big situation. So if you do have any questions, it's likely somebody else has the exact same question too. So please feel free to drop that in and I'll be checking that. So like I said a moment ago, we have Hurricane Helene here on the weather radar. You see the heavy rain associated with it. You also see the lightning and the outer bands moving in across Florida already. Has been for quite some time since this morning. If you can see my cursor here. Perfect. And those of you that are in the southeast, if you're seeing those wispy clouds move in to the area now, know that that means a change is coming when it comes to the weather. Wispy cirrus clouds in the sky. If you just look up, that means a change is coming, and that change for this situation is Helene, Hurricane Helene. It is moving north into the Gulf of Mexico here as it did impact the Yucatan Peninsula this morning. It continues to rain there a little bit too this afternoon with some bands on its southern and southwestern end of the circulation here. We do expect Helene to become a major hurricane. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit here. But Helene was called a hurricane this morning, and it's in the 11 o'clock update by the National Hurricane Center with 80-mile-per-hour sustained winds. It is expected to continue strengthening as it moves to the Gulf of Mexico. Those of you who live in the Gulf Coast area know that this is, the waters in the Gulf of Mexico are very warm. That's a big deal when it comes to hurricanes moving into this area, any tropical system really moving into this area. And one of the main reasons why they quickly become very strong. And that's why we expect to see major hurricane status within the next 24 hours under rapid intensification. So hurricanes that go under rapid intensification just means it intensifies by a certain degree over the next 24 hours. And we've seen that happen for the past few years. And many major hurricanes have fallen here across the Gulf Coast since 2017. I'm going to bring up that information here in a moment of what we've actually seen as far as how many major hurricanes across the Gulf Coast that we've seen since 2017. It's been quite a few. So I will bring up that information here soon for us to take a look at. All right, so Helene, hurricane status right now, expected to become a major hurricane here over the next 24 hours. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 major hurricanes across this area, across the Gulf Coast here. All right, going back to like my data from 2017 until now, 8 major hurricanes of at least Category 3 status across the Gulf Coast. Gulf of Mexico, very warm, usually very warm around this time of year. So it's no surprise that we do see that happening. All right. I want to go into a couple of tools that you can use as you are watching Helene for this situation with the Weather and Radar app. Let me go to this right here for you. And I will go all the way back. All right. So our app offers a lot of tools that you can use in addition to what the information that you're getting in your local area, especially if you're in Florida. You're receiving a lot of local information when it comes to evacuations, mandatory or even voluntary. Likely right now, a lot of areas are in the mandatory evacuation zones. And especially when it comes to alerts. So we provide these alerts when it comes to the weather. We have hurricane alerts on our app. Be sure to click those on in your app if you haven't done so already. And you'll see that right on your home screen here. So you get those hurricane alerts and keeps you up to date for everything for that. This is the way to turn on. You go right into your app and you go to the top left corner. You'll see a hamburger menu. You hit that and it pulls you into your settings. You can go into info and settings and it pulls you to the notifications here. You'll be able to click them right on for your area or any other area you do have on your app. And those notifications will come to your phone. Those alerts will come to your phone so that you can stay up to date easily when these situations are coming to your area or even an area you are interested in. So when you have these alerts, you'll see them right on your screen. As you see right there, you have this is from when we had Hurricane Francine. We have those notifications right there for you to tap on. That's how maybe a lot of you got to this live forecast. And we have that available to you so you can get all the information there. So you can get to the weather radar. That's what the screen was that you saw right at the beginning there. The weather radar is the very good tool. It's a very good basic tool to see rainfall, lightning, temperatures, the satellite view. And you're going to be able to see Helene as it continues to intensify over the next 24 hours and into the next couple of days as it continues to make impacts through the southeast this weekend. In addition to that, the wind radar. This is going to be a big one with Helene, and it'll be very interesting to take a look at because this is going to be a very well organized hurricane by the time it's all said and done. And you're going to be seeing these tightly wound wind streams around that circulation, which is going to show you the gusts information on the wind radar, showing those really, really high gusts from Helene. Now, I said earlier, Helene is a Category 1 hurricane with 80-mile-per-hour sustained winds. It's got higher gusts. That's going to continue to happen as it does intensify over these next several hours and into tomorrow morning. And you can tap on any location that you see on the wind radar or on the weather radar to see that local forecast there. So let's get into what the Helene details are. Let me take this off just so you can see the full detail. There we go. All right, Helene is expected to continue moving into the Gulf of Mexico, the very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico here over the next several hours to the next 24 to 36 hours as it does intensify. Now that is going to be moving in just west of Florida of the Florida Peninsula as it does continue to intensify. And while right now it's not exact as far as where in the Florida Big Bend we're expecting to see landfall, it's just going to be that area. That's as far as we know right now, and that will continue to become a more defined forecast as this does begin to really show us where it's going to be heading. So we will know more about that as the details come in and as Helene continues to move into the Gulf of Mexico. But we are expecting a landfall sometime tomorrow evening, Thursday evening, in the Florida Big Bend area. And this will continue into the southeast. So you can see it over Georgia, possibly as a tropical storm, and move into the Tennessee Valley there. It's a tropical depression. This is the forecast. Currently, things can change. So please stay up to date, have those alerts turned on, and keep an eye on your locality information as well, especially if you're in Florida, especially if you're in the southeast, as you're going to continue getting this information. Before I move on here, I just want to double check for any questions as we go. Perfect. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and dive in to the wind radar as we look at Helene. So I'm going to bring that up here right now. As Helene continues to strengthen, we're going to be seeing this tightly wound circulation across its center. So I'm going to pull that up here as we can see. The brighter the color, the dark, like in the red and the oranges, that is the more intense wind gusts that we are seeing from this area. So you can see the circulation here right in between Cuba and then as well as the Yucatan Peninsula here. So you see this area of circulation right here. The eastern side has that more intense wind gust, and that's going to continue to strengthen as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. So we have the Gulf of Mexico waters here are like bath water. And as tropical systems do move over that bath water, they take advantage of that energy. And what that provides is upward vertical motion, and that also provides strengthening energy. So that is why we're going to be seeing Helene strengthen as it continues into the Gulf of Mexico. In addition to that, we have little to no shear. So shear is the winds in the upper atmosphere, and that can blow off the top of hurricanes or tropical systems. We don't have any of that. So it's basically left to its own. It's basically left to its own to be able to strengthen and just take advantage of that warm water as it does move into the Gulf of Mexico. That's why we are going to be likely seeing that major hurricane status. Major hurricane status, by the way, is at least category 3 or higher. When it comes to hurricanes, though, the category, yes, it goes with the name, and that is a memorable thing to go with the hurricane. However, the impacts that come with it doesn't really. The winds are just one thing, right? So we're going to be seeing some storm surge, some heavy rain flooding, tornadoes, and things like that as this hurricane does move in, and that's going to be a lot over the Florida Peninsula. Even though we're not going to be seeing landfall in the peninsula, we're going to be seeing landfall in the Big Bend area. The impacts of this storm are going to be huge due to its size. So, data is showing that this hurricane is likely going to reach the size in the 90th percentile of all hurricanes. So, that's a pretty big hurricane, and that means the impacts of it just stretch even wider, miles and miles out from the center. So, let's take a look at where we are going to see Helene as it does continue to intensify on the wind radar over this evening. Okay. So we're getting, this is Eastern time here. This is 7 p.m. Eastern. You can see it start to move forward and northward into the Gulf of Mexico. Let me fast forward here into the early morning hours tomorrow. We see those winds intensify. You see those pink hues right here. These winds are going to be very strong in this area. That's indicating the strengthening of this system. Let me pull up here. Perfect. Okay. So you can see now too that we are having the gusty winds even just increase over Florida and then northward as it does continue to move north. Let's look into the early morning hours of Thursday as it continues. Look how big this system is. Like the gusty winds, they really stretch across here. That's what I'm talking about here with that 90th percentile size of a hurricane. That means the impacts are going to be stretching far and wide from the center. So this is why this is a very, very interesting situation here across Florida because the entire state, whether you're, getting landfall or not, and whether you're close to the center or not, you're getting impacts. You're getting strong impacts. So I want to go into the National Hurricane Center and show exactly what we do expect from this system and what they are calling for as well with the latest updates that are coming in. Let me pull that up here real quick. All right. Here we are. All right. So many of you, obviously across Florida, are very aware of the cone of uncertainty. What the cone is an area in which the center of that hurricane could fall in the current forecast. So it could fall here, could fall in the middle, could fall to the left. That doesn't mean that this is the only spot this hurricane is, especially when we saw it on the wind radar. We saw the winds going across the entirety of the Gulf of Mexico at to some degree. Obviously, the strongest ones being close to the center, but it really takes up its space as it moves north. Helene is expected to maintain hurricane status as it moves northward into the Gulf of Mexico and become a major hurricane by early Thursday morning at the latest, and likely make landfall as a major hurricane, at least category 3 status. What that brings in is hurricane warnings, tropical storm warnings, and storm surge warnings across these areas, especially the west coast of Florida here. We're particularly interested and concerned about the Tampa Bay area. This is one of the most flood prone areas due to the storm surge that could come in from the hurricane, as well as the flooding rains and the bay being right there. So it's very easy for the low lying areas to be impacted by the storm surge that does come in. So I do want to bring in what that storm surge forecast looks like. And let me go ahead. There it is. Okay, perfect. So storm surge, real quick recap of what storm surge is. Storm surge is not like a couple inches of flooding rain. Storm surge is water being pushed in by the hurricane's winds into the coastline. This is, and it's very often described as a wall of water being pushed in as the hurricane moves closer and closer to that area and the winds are pushing into that coastline. As they do, we could see up to 18 feet of storm surge from this hurricane across Florida's Big Bend all the way down into the northern parts of central Florida. So, up to 18 feet of storm surge. That is a couple stories high of a house. And we could see that wall of water move in, which means flooding is going to be a very big issue across this area. And many homes and those along the coastline could likely, businesses, buildings, any building could be underwater here from Helene as it does move into the area. But it doesn't just stop there. 12 to 18 feet, that's huge. But this extends all the way down. Some little bit of storm surge extends all the way down to the Florida Keys. So the entire west coast of Florida, all the way up into the Panhandle, is going to be getting some degree of storm surge from this storm because the winds moving up from the south into Florida, being pushed in. So Florida Keys, 1 to 3 feet, and then we got Southwest Florida here getting up to 5 feet, up to 7, 8 feet across the west central areas, including Tampa Bay area, up to 8 feet of storm surge moving in, and then you've got flooding rains on top of that. So this is a lot of water being pushed into the coastal areas here. And then you got 8 to 12 feet here across the Panhandle, and then it gets over to 4 feet near Mexico Beach. This water moving in can cause a lot of damage. Those of you that are under mandatory evacuations, the storm surge is the main concern of that for water moving into the coastline if you do have a coastal home. So please, check on any information that's coming in from your locality. Things need to be rushed to completion pretty soon today, and that is the official information from the National Hurricane Center as the storm continues to strengthen and move into this area here across western Florida. So storm surge, big one. And you're likely getting alerts for that on your devices. You want to make sure that you have all that information there so you're able to get at least 3 ways to receive those warnings and alerts on your phone. All right, let's also talk about the other type of water that's coming in, which is the rainfall. So the rainfall that's coming in is going to be causing a lot of issues, not just across Florida and not just across the Gulf Coast of Florida and the Panhandle, but all the way into Tennessee Valley, the lower Midwest, into the Carolinas, lower Mid-Atlantic, but especially here across the Southern Appalachians. We could see some very high totals of rainfall from the system. And the reason for that is not just because of the hurricane itself, which it is going to bring in a lot of rainfall, but there's also a system that's going to come in across the mid-Mississippi Valley and lower Mississippi Valley here at the same time. They're going to interact and going to produce a lot of rainfall. And so this is going to bring a lot of water out of the Gulf of Mexico. It's got very warm water to be working with. It's got a full stream of that too. So it'll be able to drop a lot of water in this area. And let's take a look at the possible rainfall totals that are currently forecast for this area. All right. So rainfall totals, this is the next 7 days, but this is technically through the weekend as these areas are being impacted. Rainfall totals are obviously going to be higher across the Big Bend and Florida Panhandle area here, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to see extended flooding here across western Florida. You got 2 to 4 inches possible with even more, 4 to 6 along the immediate coast here from southwest Florida into that Tampa Bay area. However, as you move into the southeast area, you got the Tennessee Valley and then the Southern Appalachians. Those rain totals continue to increase because of the interaction of those two systems, the hurricane and the storm system across the lower Mississippi Valley. So we could see anywhere from 8 to 12 inches across this area, Atlanta, maybe even 12 to 16 localized. But as you get into the Southern Appalachians here, we're seeing possibly 16 plus inches of rainfall. Which is an issue because if you're in this area, it's been raining here all week. We've had rain chances here, and the ground is going to be very soggy and saturated, which means it's 16 inches already can cause flood issues. But in addition to already having soggy ground and saturated soil, it's going to be very hard for rainfall to be able to soak into the ground quickly, which leads to runoff, can lead to landslides and things like that across this area, especially across areas that have had recent burns. Burn scar areas can quickly cause flooding issues as well. So we have some concerns for this area as even it's not going to be where it has landfall, right? It's just going to move right into the southeast and still cause those impacts around the Southern Appalachians. So everybody around the southeast, Tennessee Valley, even up into the mid-Atlantic, really need to be paying attention to Hurricane Helene as it continues to make its impacts over the next several days here to the end of the week. All right. Before I wrap up here, I want to double check any questions. Perfect. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope this was very helpful as we do continue to get updates about Hurricane Helene, we'll be doing another live forecast tomorrow as it does near landfall. So please tune into that and send this forecast also to those of you that you may not know that know about our live forecast as well, to get those alerts on their phones, on your app. The app is completely for free, so you can see those resources. They're right there. And they'll be available to you throughout this event and even through events later on in the future. Thank you all so much for joining me.